This episode is brought to you by PayPal. These days, choices are everywhere. Like, for instance, the milk in your coffee. Would you like it from a cow, a nut, a tree? Everyone wants options. And now your customers have a new option in the way they pay with PayPal in person. Just generate your unique QR code in the PayPal app for them to scan and start accepting PayPal in person today. Learn more at paypal.com/US/getQRcode.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, I'm joined by Penn State defensive coordinator Brent as we discuss Washington draft pick Shaka Toney, whom he coached in college. I know Washington is excited about that pick, so I wanted to bring in someone who knows Toney and his talents well. Before I get started, one note about the daily fantasy game, Monkey Knife Fight. With the NBA playoffs starting, if you play at least $10 at monkeyknifefight.com, between now and Friday, you get a free $20 NBA ticket. Just sign up at monkeyknifefight.com using promo code JKR, and you're good to go. Also, if you haven't checked out the previous podcast, I spoke with former Washington defensive end Ryan Kerrigan about his new team, the Philadelphia Eagles, and, of course, his time with his old one. As for Morgan Moses, who was given permission to seek a trade earlier this week, the writing was on the wall the minute they signed Charles Leno. And for those of you who listen to my podcast, and drafted Sam Cosmi, and for those of you who listened to my podcast last week with Logan Paulson, you know this was a topic we briefly discussed because it was a natural move. I had been told that Leno signed here knowing he'd start at left tackle. Well, they had Cosmi rated as a first-round pick, and they took him in the second round. They didn't draft him to sit. And after being around Cosmi on the field, in the meeting rooms, and seeing his athleticism in the rookie minicamp, they were convinced that he'd be fine. The team told Moses he could then seek a trade. It wasn't Moses going to them to ask for one. This is how the NFL works. Vets get replaced by younger, cheaper guys all the time, and in this case, a guy who's a high draft pick. Again, you don't draft guys in the first and second round to sit. Yes, it would have been given them great depth, but I really doubt that Moses would have wanted to stick around if he wasn't starting if he wasn't starting. And I definitely know they wouldn't want to pay a backup nearly $8 million. They can take that money and now use that cap space to extend another player, whether it's tight end Logan Thomas or defensive tackle Jonathan Allen. I do know that Allen will be much more costly. We all know that. And I was told as of Tuesday night, there have been no formal talks between the two sides. And that means no numbers have been exchanged. That doesn't mean Washington doesn't know the parameters of what Allen is expecting and what they will or can offer. But it does mean they haven't exchanged numbers. I think I've told you before that I expected these talks to occur in the spring, so I would say that they should start happening soon. I also know there's optimism about reaching a deal. Allen has long maintained that he wants to be here. Yes, others have said that too, but Allen is from here, and this is definitely where he wants to stay. That is a consistent thing I've heard from not just him publicly, but other people close to him privately. However, I will say, until a contract is signed, I'm not going to say it's a lock that he'll be here. Been around long enough to say that, but the signs right now are good. And so because of all that, sure, this could get done before training camp. I can't guarantee that it will, but again, there's optimism. Both sides want to be in business with one another. That's a good play. The owner really likes John Allen, and he's been the guy that they can look up to. So those are all good signs. That's where we'll leave it at. One other note on all this, getting rid of guys like Kerrigan and Moses certainly represents a new day. There have been many changes at the facility, both the business side and on football. The franchise has lost a decent amount of good people, but the reason it has done so is because this franchise hasn't been winning. And when you don't win for a long time, you bring in new people and you give them power, and here we are. Owner Dan Snyder once told Kerrigan that he'd be, quote, a Redskin for life. Now he's not. Moses certainly can play for a few more years and is coming off a solid year. But this group is trying to win, not to hang on to popular players. Before I'm going to take a little detour here, but one thing somebody brought up on Twitter, that this is a sign, like usually when you see a coach in charge with all the power, they're going to make decisions they'll oftentimes just go with the vet because they know what they have. That's not what's going on here. So I think I give them credit because they're really looking long-term with this kind of a move with Cosme. Again, you don't draft a guy there to sit him. And we don't know if he'll be better or not, but we do know that he's younger, cheaper, and this is the group that wanted him, and that matters. Now, you can obviously accomplish both as far as winning and keeping guys, but both Kerrigan and Moses are each over 30 years old. I don't think they would have played Kerrigan more than 10 or so snaps or felt like that's about where his effectiveness was, which means they clearly see him on the downside. And other teams do too, because that's why he didn't sign a big deal. He's going to Philly to be a backup. That's okay. He's a situational guy now. And sometimes in the case with Moses, they're moving on from him perhaps a year earlier than anticipated, but they also have a younger, cheaper, more athletic option to take over. That's what you want. Will it work? We'll see. But the method behind it is how you construct winning rosters. I remember in New England when Bill Belichick would get rid of guys like Richard Seymour, Ty Law, and I'd wonder, what was he doing? Well, they kept winning. So what you saw is he would get rid of guys where he felt like their effectiveness is going to go down. Let's max out and get what we can for them and then keep moving on and keep winning. And they kept winning. Now, of course, it's easier to do that when you have Tom Brady. But their defense was always good, too, despite losing players like this. This is clearly not New England. But I'm just talking about the approach. As one person told me the other day, it's a very militaristic setup. And by that, he meant there's a clear chain of command, and you just stick to the role you're in. That hasn't always been the case here. It's a new way of operating in some regards. As my good friend, Madison High School baseball coach, Pudge Jorman, that's Vienna, Virginia, as he once told me, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. Well, they're changing it up a little bit, and Rivera clearly is using his power to construct the roster the way he sees fit. And we'll see. We'll see if it works. I know some of you wonder also about guard Brandon Sheriff. This is my educated opinion and not a report, but I just think it'll be too hard to keep him here beyond this season. He's already turned down offers each offseason, and in 2 years he will have made, in the last year and this year, he will have made $33 million. He can afford to be patient, and he clearly will be. I'd be surprised if he signs an extension here, but again, that's just a guess based on how it's gone for 3 off seasons. I also heard that he was crushed by the news about Morgan. Those two are very tight. They played together for a while. They dressed their lockers were by each other. I don't think that will factor into his decision simply because his actions have already suggested one outcome. But I do know they were close, and I do know that it hurt him. We'll see where it goes from there. But again, it's just hard to imagine Sheriff sticking around, but stranger things have happened, and I don't feel as close to that negotiation as I do to some others. Anyway, that's it from me. After this break, I'll be back with Penn State defensive coordinator Brent Pry to discuss Shaka Toney.
I'm Amanda Klutz, Broadway actress, dancer, and celebrity trainer, and I partnered with Equinox to create a custom AK rope class. It's a rhythmic group fitness experience, and music is an integral component. Jump and sculpt using the rope in ways you've never imagined. It's time to get back to moving our bodies. AK Rope, my signature class, now available at Equinox, is a safe, fun, and positive way to do just that.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a fun new offer from Monkey Knife Fight that can enhance any sports experience, whether you're at a game, on your couch, or in a bar. It's a daily fantasy sports league that is easy to play. You can sign up on monkeyknifefight.com using promo code JKR and play games such as More or Less. Will an NBA player score more or less than a listed point total? You can do the same in baseball. Will a pitcher have more or less strikeouts than a given amount, etc.? It's fun. And every Friday, it's Home Run Derby. Bet on 3 guys who will have home runs that night. All 3 hit one, you share in the prize pool. Every week, you can participate in their Eagle Eye jackpot based on the PGA Tour. Choose from any sport, from NASCAR to UFC and League of Legends. And of course, once football rolls back around, there will be even more fun prop bets. This is daily sports betting designed for the average fan to use their knowledge and have some fun. Sign up now at monkeyknifefight.com and use promo code JKR. That's promo code JKR. This show can be found on Podcast DC, the new local app with hundreds of options in local news, health, and of course, of the DMV region. Download the Podcast DC app to hear all the Empire shows as well as the other great content. Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with Brent Pry. I just want to give Washington fans a sense of who they are getting, because I do know that this team is excited about having drafted him in the 7th round. So in general, what are they getting in Shaka?
Yeah, obviously he's a true threat off the edge. The guy is his rush ability is very, very high. We've had some good defensive ends around here over the last 6, 7, 8 years, and he's one of the best as far as rush ability. Just, has a real savviness, has good speed, can bend, has length, like a lot of qualities that you want in that edge guy. So they're getting a dynamic pass rusher.
Is that what separates him from some of the other guys you've had, just that combination you talked about, or is there something else along with him for that?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. Shaka was one of our smartest football players. Very, very intelligent football player. Another thing that people don't understand or forget is we offered Shaka as a linebacker. 197 pounds, 195 pound linebacker, 6'3", and some change, long, could run. And he was committed to us as a linebacker. And right about signing day, he let us know that he would prefer to play defensive end. And of course we obliged, and after a couple of years, he got his weight up where it needed to be. And, so he's smart enough. We love standing him up and doing some things with him because he's just a really good athlete. I still would say today that Shaka could have been a heck of a linebacker for us.
What kind of, where would you envision him as a linebacker? And I ask you that because a lot of people thought maybe as a 3-4 linebacker, these guys run a 4-3. And I think, not positive, but that they would like to use him as an off the ball guy, plus as a situational rusher. So what kind of linebacker would you envision in like a 4-3?
Yeah, that's kind of what we've done. What we did with Micah Parsons. I don't think that there's, I think Shaka can do some of that. I think he's got a really good skill set. He's fast. He's smart. So, for us, he would have played Will or potentially Mike linebacker in our 4-3. Kind of same spots there, kind of, especially with as smart as he is. He could have called the defense and set the defense and done all that. It's really, really high football IQ.
Where does that usually have been around long enough, and you have too? Usually that comes from a lot of preparation. So what makes him such a smart player?
Number one, he's a smart individual. He's got a great family, very involved. Always had a lot of maturity from day one. Just to understand and has a unique perspective on things. He's been, Coach Franklin would say the same thing. We've talked a lot about just how intelligent he is. And, I think that there's no doubt, tremendous production from the defensive end spot. But, if he told me he wanted to do it again and play linebacker, we'd oblige. That's what I would say.
Where did you see that intelligence showing up on the field? What kind of plays would he make because of that?
Yeah, he was crafty. He understood, offensive systems. He understood quarterback reads, and probably, really important to me, he understood what most of the rest of the defensive players were being asked to do on a particular call. So we were able to bounce him up and we would stem from 4 down to 3 down and pop him up and let him prowl around and take some liberties. I think he got a nice sack in a situation like that against, slipping my mind. But we had stemmed and popped him up, and he kind of came down in there. We would spy him on quarterbacks. him and Parsons were the guys that we felt like, from the front seven group could track those quarterbacks like Justin Fields and get them on the ground, be fast enough to get them and then be able to be the athlete to get them on the ground. So, he's got a lot of that. He got a lot of, he can play stood up, as well as with some training, he could be as good at that as he is, out of the 3-point.
It's funny because you bring up Justin Fields, and I remember seeing some plays when you guys played them, I think this past year, where the only reason why he didn't get a sack is because Justin was able to slide away and make a big play. And there was one throw down the left side that Shaka beats the right tackle, but Justin takes, I think, 2 steps to his left. And the play is like, it's a really nice throw, but it stemmed from because like Shaka pushes him out. He pushed him out. So yeah, I don't know if you remember that play, but it just, to me, what jumped out was how that's a sack against almost any other quarterback.
Yep. That's exactly right. So he's just and I'll say this, he's one of the most, he's just been a great teammate to so many guys here. If you put a popularity deal, and I don't mean from just being well-liked, he's just very unselfish and very giving to his teammates. No, he's just, very endeared by a lot of folks here in this football program.
Another play that I saw make to me as an example of the athleticism and probably the smarts too, was that you guys played Georgia State. And I think there was a little option play where he's charged at the quarterback, pitches it, and he turns and makes the play and gets like a 3 or 4 yard loss. Yep. Is that kind of typical of his ability?
And again, that's an example of him just, he can operate from a 2-point. He's got a lot of linebacker traits in him. And he's smart enough to know, let me feather this guy and get the ball pitched and stay square shouldered where I can redirect and go get it. You watch him in the Cotton Bowl. We popped him up in the Cotton Bowl, and he drops back into that low hole and gets his hand on a ball, makes an unbelievable play for us. So there's just so much he could do. He's a very versatile football player.
Do you think
you're talking about a guy with a high rush ability, but also can drop and cover tight ends and do some things like that. So, I think he's a unique get for them.
Do you think that it was just the COVID that caused him to fall to the 7th round? What else did you hear from teams about what the explanation could be that he lasted that far?
I didn't. The teams I talked to were super excited about him. I know that Coach Franklin had some of the same feedback. So I don't know, maybe it's the size, he's not as big as maybe some of the other guys that were out there. But he plays with his length. Like, he's got long arms and he can, these last 2 years, he's been an every down guy for us. Even though he wasn't the biggest of defensive ends in this league or the biggest that we've had, he's been a 2-down guy these last 2 years. And to me, had no liabilities in the run game, not for us.
And you mentioned, how well liked he is and respected and all that. What are some other examples of him just off the field that kind of lends itself towards success on the field?
Yeah, I think it's just his, he had a open door welcome mat for guys on his football team at his home, at his place. His family is very well thought of and just friendly and supportive of not just Shaka, but everybody in the program. Just all the way back from the recruiting process, to be honest, really enjoyed the recruitment in his family. And I think that endearment, that quality, from his family and the love and he had that for everybody, and I think guys identified with that, and guys that were having tough times, Shaka's a guy they'd go to. Guys that were trying to get better or take the next step, Shaka's a guy they'd go to. So, just a real asset that way. I think that, that's the other piece of it that they're going to enjoy about him.
I did want to spend about a couple minutes talking about one of your other players who plays for a team that Washington fans do not like, Micah Parsons in Dallas. Quite a talent. What's your take on Micah and what you think the impact he can make in Dallas?
Yeah, Micah, 2 years of college football and only 2 years of linebacker play. So his ceiling and how much better, I really, was looking forward to the growth and development in year 3 with him. So I think Dallas has gotten himself a gem right there. You talk about a guy that, plays as fast as he runs, has rush ability. Micah could have been an All-American defensive end. I believe that. And, we had some big plans for him in year 3. He's also a guy that, that learns pretty well and, just kept growing into the position. And, I think he's an impact player. Absolutely. On every down.
What do you think that, you talk about impact player, what are one or two of the things that you say, this is what stands out most about him on the field when as a coach, what are things
his acceleration and speed, it's going to be special for the linebacker position. This guy can really giddy up, and you watch his redirect and his takeoff. I mean, he can accelerate like, shoot, I don't know if I've had somebody. I mean, you're talking about corner acceleration. This guy can go. One of my favorite stories is before his freshman year here, he came to 5 camps that summer. Like he loves to compete. This is the most competitive guy I've ever coached. He could be thrown up over the trash can in morning workouts, and you call his name to come compete against Jason Oweh or Shaka Toney or somebody, and he is going to, give it with the best of them now. This dude is a competitor. Doesn't matter if it's bowling or ping pong or whatever. So you're going, the Skins are going to see a competitive guy running around in that number 11 now.
And so I'm assuming, because obviously before the draft, there was a lot of talk about red flags, character. Clearly, Dallas wasn't worried about that because they got him pretty high. What was your take on all that?
Listen, I've known Micah since 9th grade. There's no character flaws there. This dude is kind-hearted and likable. He's I don't know that he'd squash a bug. He's just one of those guys. He's got a big heart. And, I was so happy that Dallas was able to kind of, just see things as they were. This guy was absolutely not it wasn't anything that would have kept me from drafting him. That's for sure.
Brent, I appreciate your time. Really good insight, and look forward to watching all these guys play. So thank you very much for joining.
Absolutely. Good luck with the story, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Simply by Frito-Lay. You have enough on your plate, but now there's one less thing to overthink with Simply by Frito-Lay. It's your favorite Frito-Lay snacks with ingredients to feel good about, like Simply Blue Corn Tostitos, sea salted Ruffles, and white cheddar Cheetos Puffs. All made with no artificial flavors or colors. So enjoy what you love and look for Simply brand snacks online or at a store near you.
I'm Byron Kerr, your host for the Curly W podcast. Join me on the Curly W for the very latest on the Washington Nationals. We'll give you an inside look as to what's happening with the Nats right now and give you also a chance to visit with Nats players and coaches, present and past, to tell you what it's like and what they hope to accomplish with the Nationals. From Fredericksburg to Nats Park, West Palm Beach to Rochester, Wilmington to Harrisburg, it's all Nats baseball. Subscribe to Curly W wherever you get your podcasts. Another great show from Empire Media.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Brent for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back with another episode Sunday night. Talk to you next time.